Yo, what's up everybody? Today we're going to start on the mouthpiece and a donut section for this tube. We're going to start here with the donut section, and I'm going to do just a spiral section. The whole donut will just be a spiral with the axis switched and have the hole go right through both terminations. So I'm just going to start with the spiral, and the key to having a nice even spiral section is basically just having a nice even heat base. I'll go back and forth trying to get everything a similar heat, try to get a nice even heat throughout it. And then the spin, you can find the sweet spot where it really wants to spiral up nicely. A nice spiral does depend on the tubing you're using. Some tubing will really spiral up nice and easily. Some you have to really fight the whole time. But here I'm just starting to shape out my disc section. I basically just blew a ball, attached a punny, and I'm just slowly gathering it, melting it back, and getting it into a nice round section. And here I'm just attaching a punny, and then I'll focus my heat on the middle here, just kind of skipping my flame off the top of that so I'm not heating up either of my handles. You definitely want to, learn to angle your flame to avoid your handles. And here I'm just kind of using my marver pad as a nice straight edge there to keep my sides nice and flat. And you just slowly work it up into a disc. And so here I'm going to switch the axis on it. I like to use my mini torch again just to kind of give me the best aim possible, just to put that hole right where I want it. And there I'm just reaming it out to, 10 mil or something, about the size of my handle. And there, just a nice cold seal onto the front. I rip that off the handle and do that termination. And then I want to shape out this side. It's a little trickier because you have to use a tool or a tube of glass to puff into it. And there I'm just attaching my handle, switching my axis, crack my punny off, and I'll reattach it to the top of my disc there so I can go back into my handle weld, get it nice and solid. And now next step is to push the donut or pop the donut through. So I want to just start by heating up the middle of one side, and I use my reamer there to help push it down, and then repeat this on the other side. That's the other side there until both walls are touching. That will basically make a seal there, and then we'll heat the tungsten pick and use it as a drill and poke through that seal. And that is basically one way to make a donut. And from there, it's just switching back and forth, putting heat in. And so here I'm just blasting some flame through the donut and reaming it out. You do want to be careful not to grind your reamer in there too hard. You don't want to push or twist too hard, or it will leave little black or sometimes little red specks. I don't think they look very nice. And here I'm just trying to evenly heat all sides of the inside of that. just making sure that that weld where the two walls meet is nice and smooth. You can hold it up to the light or use your flashlight, or even just look through the hole that you pop just to make sure that the walls of that weld are nice and even and smooth and happy. So there I'm just popping a hole on the end and getting that reamed out to be a connection point onto the mouthpiece. There we go. Nice little donut section. Looking nice in the sunlight, I must say. That steel wool with black borders, can't beat it. Okay, so now I'm gonna do a mouthpiece, and for the mouthpiece, I want it to be kind of this tapered shape, but I want to build it out of two rewig sections. A rewig is just a wigwag that has had the axis switched and is wigwagged again, hence the name. So here I'm just getting my two sections handled up and pulled down to the same size so that I know I'm going to have two of the same size rewig balls to weld together for my mouthpiece. When I do a rewig, I tend to do larger, more loose wigs. They're not as small and tight. They don't need to be as precise. You don't need to be quite as focused, to be honest. They're almost more laid back pattern for me to make. Because they resemble that kind of flamey or kind of more flowy kind of psychedelic look. So they don't need to be, all your tips don't need to be perfectly lined up. You can kind of work a little faster with a little bit bigger flame. They're fun to do. So here I'm just gathering up that wig. I only put 4 or 5 wigs in that one, and they're fairly large, fairly simple wig-wag section. And here I'm just gathering that into a ball like normal, and then I will switch the axis. And then the trick there is to switch the axis, heat it up, and then pull it back down into a tube. So here we go, just getting my hole right where I want it. Again, it's very important to always have your terminations puffed out after they're done. You don't want them to get really thick, because then they will get washy and the colors will start to bleed and not look very crisp. And so here I'm just putting some heat into that wig ball and attaching my 6mm punny there, and I'll put a little more heat into it, get it nice and super hot, and then pull it back down into, roughly a 12mm tube. And so from here, it's just another few, 3, 4 looser, bigger wigwags. I feel when you do too many wigs and they're too tight and too close together, I feel like the pattern that I think looks best, it gets a little lost. It gets a little too chaotic. There's just lines everywhere. But this way, with only 3 or 4 big loose wigs, you get a real flame-like pattern, and that's kind of what I'm going for with this fire fade color anyways. So, and from there, it's just gathering it back into a ball, just like normal. And here I'm just putting a good amount of heat into it, getting it nice and molten and puffing it nice and round, getting my wall thickness all the same and popping a hole. And I'm basically just gonna repeat that process. I need 2 of these, so let's do another one. And on rewigs, I usually skip spiraling up my terminations. When those spirals get rewigged, sometimes, in my opinion, it's a personal preference thing, but I don't really like how they look, so I just skip spirals altogether. And then when that little point gets rewigged, it just kind of turns into another little tip of those flames, not necessarily a washed out spiral. Be the raccoon. That's the new slogan. So there I'm just, again, putting some heat into it, getting it nice and round, and getting my hole popped. So there, just puffing out that termi, making sure it's nice and crisp. Toss that handle on there and heat it up and pull it back down and rewig. And here, just getting my hole popped, getting them ready to be welded together. So there's 2 big balls. There it's just showing you popping in my earplug so I can actually puff into it. And they're just getting both lips hot and attaching them. And we've done this before, just to, focus on being steady, being straight, not twisting, not pulling, not pushing, just being careful. Just don't f it up. And here I'm just working it, just thickening up, kind of getting my tapered shape, using my marver pad to thicken the walls up a little bit, give it the shape I'm looking for. Gathering it up, thickening it up. I like my mouthpieces to be nice and thick. I am going to add a ball of peacock onto the end and really thicken that up. So I want this section to be nice and thick if I'm going to add that onto it and thicken it up as well. So there I'm just puffing out my end, getting that all even. And there's the 2 rewigs matched up. You can kind of see it resembles a kind of a flamey fire look. And here is a chunk of the peacock that I actually cup stuffed back on episode 2. So I'm going to take a chunk of that and add that onto my rewig section, and then I'll thicken that up so it'll basically become a really thick lip wrap, but it'll start as a hollow section. So here I'm just ripping off a small amount, and I'm going to get that end all nice, get the termination all clean, work that, put a good amount of heat into it, puff it out, let it collapse, puff it out. That way all the walls will kind of melt into the same thickness. And there, just popping my hole, getting it ready. And I want to put a lip wrap in there. So I pulled a stringer of some Eclipse, about a 2 mil stringer. And I'm just gonna do a couple coils of that around the lip here. And there I just did 2 wraps around of the Eclipse, and I'm gonna put some heat into that, get it halfway melted on, and attach them. And here, just putting some heat into it, working it a bit, puffing it out, making them one piece. So there you can see the black lip wrap and the peacock section. The black lip wrap always makes just a nice little divider line. I don't know, cleans everything up. And so here I'm just going to ream that open and then really thicken it up. I want that lip to be, at least 8 mil thick. So I'm going to put quite a bit of heat into it and then just ream it up and paddle it back. Ream it up and paddle it back. Here I got, I'll use my paddle to bring it down and then push it in, which will make the hole smaller. And then I'll use my reamer to open that back up and then repeat the process. Here I'm using my paddle as basically a third wall so that I can condense as well as squish basically at the same time to really help thicken it up. There you can see I'm getting a nice thickness there. Using my larger reamer, making sure it's nice and round. And that's a good start to the shape that I'm going for. So to put that on a handle, you want to flare open your 12 mil or your 14 or 16 or whatever you want to use. I probably should have used something a little bigger than 12 mil on this piece, but that's how it goes. You want to be nice and precise and just weld that right to the inside edge of that mouthpiece. That way, it's plenty strong, but it also comes off really easily. So when your piece is all done and it's time to mouthpiece it, it makes for a really nice, really clean and easy removal of your handle. So there, I'm just picking off that handle and I'm gonna shape it out a little bit more, get it a little bit more of a sharper cone shape. This isn't really a tube that I've made a bunch of times or anything. I'm kind of just freestyling this as I go. So I'm not gonna do everything perfect, but I guess that contributes to our learning experience. So here, just using my marver pad, shaping it out, being mindful to go in after I marver it and remove any tool marks or any lines that I just grinded into it. So here, just opening up my hole to the same size as the hole on my donut section. You may hear my lawn guys in the background. I apologize. And so here I'm just getting both lips hot, and here we go, be the lathe. Just put a good amount of heat into this. I want both of these shapes to kind of look like they just kind of flow together, That's the goal. So it's putting an even amount of heat into both sides, thickening up and puffing out. There we go, just opening up the other side of the donut where I will attach it to the beaker later on. And there we go. There's the mouthpiece and a donut section. Basically the top of the tube. Thanks for watching, and check us out next time when we'll start the assembly of the tube.